One of these cases inspired The Exorcist, another led to dozens of reported exorcisms, and one remains so controversial that people still argue about it decades later. What if possession wasn't just a horror movie trope? Across different countries and centuries, people have reported terrifying cases of individuals who seemed controlled by forces beyond explanation. Some believe these stories prove the existence of evil entities. Others believe there are more rational explanations. Tonight, we explore 5 of the most chilling possession cases ever recorded. Case number 5, Clara Germana Cele. Our first case takes us to South Africa in 1906. At a Catholic boarding school, a 16-year-old student named Clara Germana Cele became the center of a story that would be discussed for more than a century. According to reports from the time, Clara was once an ordinary student, but witnesses claimed her behavior suddenly changed. Teachers and fellow students reportedly noticed strange outbursts, unusual aggression, and behavior they could not explain. Some accounts alleged that Clara seemed to possess knowledge she should not have had. Others claimed she displayed unusual physical strength. As rumors spread throughout the school, fear began to grow among both students and staff. Religious authorities were eventually called to investigate the situation. What followed would become one of South Africa's most famous alleged possession cases. Skeptics argue that many details were exaggerated over time, while believers see the case as evidence of something far more disturbing. More than a century later, the story of Clara Germana Cele continues to fuel debate among historians, paranormal researchers, and the curious alike. Case number 4, the Smurl Haunting. Our next story takes us to Pennsylvania in the United States during the 1970s. What began as a normal family moving into a new home would eventually become one of America's most famous alleged haunting cases. Jack and Janet Smurl, along with their children, claimed they experienced a series of disturbing events inside their house. At first, the incidents seemed minor. Strange sounds echoed through empty rooms. Unexplained knocking noises came from behind walls. Household objects appeared to move without explanation. But according to the family, the activity gradually became more intense. They reported hearing heavy footsteps when nobody else was home. Doors allegedly opened and closed on their own. Some family members claimed they saw dark figures standing in hallways before disappearing moments later. As fear spread throughout the household, word of the haunting began attracting public attention. Paranormal investigators became interested in the case, and the family's story was eventually featured in books and television programs. Skeptics argued that stress, misinterpretations, and natural explanations could account for many of the reported events. However, supporters of the family's claims insist that too many witnesses experienced unusual occurrences for the entire story to be dismissed. To this day, the Smurl haunting remains one of the most debated paranormal cases in American history. Case number 3, Roland Doe. In 1949, a case emerged that would eventually inspire one of the most famous horror films ever made. To protect his identity, the teenager at the center of the story became known only by the pseudonym Roland Doe. According to reports, the strange events began shortly after the death of a close relative. Family members claimed they started hearing unexplained scratching sounds inside the house. At first, they dismissed the noises as ordinary household disturbances, but the incidents allegedly became more difficult to explain. Witnesses reported hearing knocks coming from inside walls. Furniture was said to move unexpectedly. Some claimed objects shifted position without anyone touching them. As concern grew, the family sought help from doctors and religious authorities. Several individuals documented the unusual events in journals and reports, creating one of the most well-known paranormal case files in American history. According to accounts from the time, Roland underwent a series of religious interventions. Witnesses described strange sounds, sudden movements, and unexplained disturbances occurring during these sessions. News of the case remained relatively unknown to the public for years. However, details would later inspire author William Peter Blatty while writing The Exorcist, transforming the story into one of the most influential horror narratives ever created. Skeptics believe the events may have been caused by psychological factors, pranks, or misunderstandings. Believers argue that the number of witnesses involved makes the case difficult to dismiss entirely. More than 70 years later, the mystery of Roland Doe continues to fuel debate among paranormal researchers and historians alike. Case number 2, the Loudon Possessions. Our next case takes us back to 17th century France, to a town called Loudun. Inside an Ursuline convent, a series of disturbing events reportedly began to unfold among a group of nuns. What started as isolated incidents soon escalated into one of the most controversial possession cases in history. According to historical accounts, several nuns began exhibiting sudden violent reactions. Witnesses claimed they shouted, convulsed, and spoke in voices that were not their own. As the situation intensified, religious authorities were called to investigate. Exorcisms were performed in an attempt to understand or stop what was happening inside the convent. However, the case quickly grew beyond religion alone. Political tensions, accusations, and public spectacle became intertwined with the events in Loudun. Some historians argue that the situation may have been influenced by social pressure, fear, and manipulation during a time of political instability. One figure in particular, a priest named Urbain Grandier, became central to the controversy. He was accused of being involved in the events, leading to a trial that drew widespread attention across France. Whether the incidents were genuine possession, psychological phenomena, or a product of political conflict remains debated to this day. The Loudun possessions remain one of the most complex and controversial cases in both religious and historical records. Case number 1, Anneliese Michel. Our final case is perhaps the most famous and most debated possession story of the modern era. It began in Germany during the 1970s with a young woman named Anneliese Michel. By most accounts, Anneliese lived a relatively normal life. However, as she entered her late teens, she began experiencing severe health problems. She reportedly suffered seizures and was later diagnosed with neurological conditions. Despite receiving medical treatment, those close to her claimed her condition continued to worsen. Family members and religious observers reported behavior they believed could not be explained by conventional means alone. According to various accounts, Anneliese described hearing disturbing voices and experiencing terrifying visions. Those around her claimed she developed an intense aversion to certain religious objects and places. As concern grew, her family sought help from religious authorities. After extensive review, permission was reportedly granted for a series of religious interventions. Over the following months, numerous sessions were conducted. Witnesses described dramatic events and unusual behavior, while recordings and documentation from the period would later become the subject of worldwide attention. However, not everyone agreed on what was happening. Medical professionals argued that her symptoms could be explained through physical and psychological illness. Others believed the case represented something beyond scientific understanding. The debate intensified after Anneliese's death, leading to legal proceedings and international media coverage. Decades later, the case remains one of the most controversial intersections of faith, medicine, and mystery ever recorded. Whether viewed as a tragic medical case, a misunderstood psychological struggle, or evidence of something unexplained, the story of Anneliese Michel continues to fascinate people around the world. From South Africa to France, from quiet family homes to ancient convents, these stories have endured for decades, and in some cases centuries. Some people believe they are evidence of supernatural forces. Others argue they reveal the power of fear, belief, and the limits of human understanding. Whatever the explanation may be, one thing is certain. These cases continue to spark debate long after the events themselves have passed into history. Which case do you find the most unsettling? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoy mysteries, urban legends, and unexplained stories from around the world, be sure to subscribe for more.